So I mean, it was exhausting. It was super stressful, but I felt like it really accelerated my development. And I always look back on that as like a really important project in my career where a lot of stuff was thrown at me, and we just had to figure it out. And I came out of that with like a lot of, just feeling like I could handle whatever was next.
Welcome back to the workshop presented by Applin Martin. On today's episode, we're joined by project manager Ethan Rossnagel out of the Applin Vancouver office. After taking over the reins from Liam, Ethan has continued the great work of the Applin pump divisions, whether it be through design or construction. We dive into what pump systems are, where they are currently being used, and how they will be used in future developments where work was once thought not possible. It was great to hear Ethan share his history, working relationships, and stories within the industry, and I hope you all enjoy. Thank you. Before we get into kind of what you and your team do and the world of pumps, if you want to give me a brief background about yourself, where'd you grow up, where'd you go to school, and how many years of experience you have within the industry? Yeah,
for sure. I grew up in Langley, did a few random jobs out there. After high school, I did some well drilling, did some emissions testing, landscaping, bunch of random stuff. Moved out to Vancouver shortly after, ended up studying at Langara for a little while. Wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, so I was taking some history classes, some English classes, stuff like that. Turned out it wasn't for me, so I shifted gears, ended up attending a bar in Kitsilano for a little while before I eventually went to BCIT and completed the diploma program there, which I finished in 2016, and I started at Applin 2 weeks later, and I've been there ever since.
Very cool. So you did the high school, then you went into work, and then back to schooling. Talk to me a little bit about that. How was that? Was it tough, kind of jumping back into the schooling world after working for a bit, or?
It wasn't too long. I mean, I did some random jobs for a few years after high school, and then I went back, moved to Vancouver. Yeah. Got enrolled at Langara, did a couple years there. Wasn't really my thing. Mm-hmm. So it took a little bit of time, and then I pivoted over to decided to get into engineering.
Very cool. Was there anybody or anything that kind of inspired you to get into engineering? Like you said before, the arts and the other subjects kind of weren't, or English wasn't for you. Was there somebody that said, hey, by the way, you're really good at math, you're really good at science, or was it kind of just something you always enjoyed, like those kind of subjects?
Nothing, no specific moment where I was like pushing that direction. I just kind of wanted something, I wanted to get into a career that I thought would be stable, but also interesting and offer a lot of options. Turned out I was right about that. I've really enjoyed it so far.
Okay. So now that you kind of work with Applin, if you want to give me your exact role and what responsibilities you hold on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, so I'm a project manager with the water wastewater team. We do a variety of projects: stormwater pump stations, sanitary pump stations, water booster stations, anything that we would refer to as nonlinear infrastructure, anywhere in a sewer, sanitary, or water system where you have like a node or some sort of facility. Yeah. And we work on all phases of project, from concept design to detailed design, tendering, construction phase and post-construction phase. We're involved with commissioning of stations and facilities. So it's great. Yeah, like a great diversity of different work that we deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and I think that's important when you're looking for a job, right? Is the kind of like a different puzzle, I guess you could say, every sort of different day. You're not dealing with like the same problem every sort of.
No, there's nothing monotonous about what our team does, which is nice.
Yeah, I was going to say the variables change from project to project.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you want to speak on some of those kind of different variables that you have to deal with?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like just the range of different projects that we deal with, and the different clients that we deal with. We have municipal clients. We deal with a lot of developers, a lot of different private clients. So it's just trying to service the client's needs, and it just varies a lot depending on who you're working with and what they're trying to accomplish.
Very cool. So now we'll get into the actual, I guess, nitty gritty of the meat of pumps and what are they. If you can give me kind of a definition, I guess, of a pump system, and then what type of projects they're used in, and where do you see them being used?
Yeah, just you use a pumping facility anywhere where you're in like a low-lying area where you've got to lift up the stormwater or the sanitary to a higher area. So we do a lot of stormwater drainage pump stations. lifting water up into the river, into the ocean, over the dike, that type of thing.
Yep.
And then a lot of sanitary pump stations where you're in an area that's too low to connect to a gravity system, so you've got to pump the sewage some distance until you get it high enough into a place where you can discharge it into the system. And then we've been doing a lot of water booster stations as well, working on pressurizing the potable water system, both with booster pumps and also with PRVs and water reservoirs.
Okay, so now let me get into kind of how this integrates kind of into land development projects. So is it more so when you're working with like a civil designer and they'll come to your team and they'll say, hey, by the way, this is kind of how the topography this is how the topography is. This is how we're looking to do the grading.
Yeah.
We're looking to have a pump system, and then you guys kind of get involved, or at what stage of the project?
Yeah,
are you guys
that's
involved
exactly
in?
how it happens with the land development side. So someone from our land development team will come over and say, we've designed, this parcel, and we've realized we can't connect to the gravity system. Where should we put a pump facility? How big does it need to be? What sort of bells and whistles does it have to have?
Mm-hmm.
And then we come in and we advise them on what that's going to look like, what a general cost for it's going to be. And then we can dive into the design and help them with that depending on the client's needs.
Okay. So now I know, speaking of my experience out in Ontario and in Toronto, sanitary systems can be quite expensive. Pumps can be quite expensive to run. Is there kind of a lot of back and forth between you and the land development team, you and the client? And then if you can speak to some of the challenges that take place.
Yeah, there's often a lot of surprise at what something like that will cost.
Yeah.
When you first kind of pitch it to them, like this is what you might need. And it's not just what the developer or what the private entity is looking for. They also might have to satisfy some requirements of the local municipality, or they might be tying into their system, or they might be handing that pump station over to the local municipality after it's been built. So there's like kind of like a web of stuff that has to be sort of figured out there before you actually proceed with the design. Is who's the end user going to be? What are they going to want out of that station, and what are their design requirements, which will all impact kind of like the design and the scale of the station.
Very cool. Now, that's the design portion. Do you and your team also get involved in then the construction and the maintenance of these systems as well?
Yeah, not so much the maintenance, but we're heavily involved with the construction. We'll manage the contract for the client. We'll inspect the pump station. We'll monitor progress. We'll deal with all the regular CA stuff. And then once the station's been completed, we'll come in and we'll assist with the final commissioning to make sure everything's working as designed.
Oh, very cool. Now, in terms of projects, like you said before, because you're working in a lot of lowland areas and you're moving liquids kind of up, I don't want to say upriver, but upland and stuff. Yeah. Some of the topography or some of the locations you guys have worked in have got to be either pretty remote or pretty unique than a typical, I want to say, land development subdivision that might just be on the side of a road, and then that's that, right? So what's been your most unique project that you've worked on? Either challenging, B, interesting? I'll let you kind of take it to where you want to go.
It's kind of hard to narrow it down. We've done some pretty neat projects over the years. What comes to mind is the Shell Road North drainage pump station in the city of Richmond. That was a really neat one where we had an existing large drainage pump station that needed to be replaced. We ended up raising it to using part of the existing structure to save on cost, and raising that pump station and raising the dike in that area. That was a really neat one. We did another large drainage pump station with the city of New Westminster, which had a big art component to it, which is very cool. But one project that always comes back in my mind is when I first started out, I was really green, just cutting my teeth, and I got handed this utility upgrade project for a local municipality. Mm-hmm. And it had already been designed, and I kind of took over to manage the contract administration. Anyways, the project was tendered, and then it sat for almost a year until the owner decided to award it. And in that time, the local regulations for contaminated soils had changed, and we got into construction. They broke ground, and we realized that all of the soil in the area was contaminated and had to be disposed at a permitted facility. Huge cost implications for the owner. So like I said, I was pretty green, and all of a sudden I was in all these,
legislations and rules, you're in between two parties.
Yeah, and like kind of working with the owner and the contractor, being like, we've got a budget on this, we've got to figure it out. So
yeah,
ended up kind of redesigning a lot of it and using trenchless technologies to install the deep sewer. Just anything we could do to limit the amount of excavations that we were doing, get away from conventional trenching.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was exhausting. It was super stressful, but I felt like it really accelerated my development. And I always look back on that as like a really important project in my career, where a lot of stuff was thrown at me, and we just had to figure it out. And I came out of that with like a lot of, just feeling like I could handle whatever was next.
Yeah, well, that's kind of where I wanted to go next, right? Was what was obviously pump stations and pumping in general kind of is a more of a niche space kind of within the land development portion of it, right? So would you say then that was your almost biggest learning lesson as your kind of career went on, was like, oh wow, now I'm with the big boys, kind of doing all these design and stuff?
Yeah, I don't even know if it was, like, I learned a lot on it. It was more just like, it was kind of just like getting battle tested, battle hardened, and like, this is kind of, you just have to be a problem solver, and you've got to work with everybody on the project team, the owner, the contractor, other consultants, and just come up with a solution to whatever happens. Because, a lot of these projects, you don't know what's going to happen when you actually get into the ground and start installing it.
Yeah. What would you say then was one of the biggest surprises kind of that you've seen on a project, when you've kind of, like you said before, a lot of pump stations, you're dealing with ground that's typically not, I don't want to say not developable, but you're dealing with a lot of unique circumstances and unique areas.
Yeah. Well, I'd mentioned the Boundary Road drainage pump station in New Westminster earlier, and that was an interesting one. We were replacing the existing pump station, so we were building a new large drainage pump station right next to the existing one at the end of a canal. And when they started excavating for the new station, they found the old pump station that had been abandoned over 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And had been identified on record drawings as having been removed. So there's this huge concrete structure right in the way of our project.
Wow.
So once again, all of a sudden you're just problem solving and trying to figure out a way, how can you deal with this cost effectively and quickly to move on.
Yeah, so I would say
that was a surprise.
No, exactly. That's what I was gonna bring up, was then kind of the skills that a lot of you and your team then have to deal with, is like learning on the fly and being able to adjust.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And now you also talked about a lot of the work you do is private, but a lot of it is municipal. Can you kind of talk about a little bit the communication kind of between those two parties, and then I guess the differences between working with just a municipality, working with just private, and then kind of combining those two together?
Yeah, so I mean, going back in my career, first starting out in Capital Works, it was all working with municipalities, and over the years it's kind of been trending towards working more with developers. There's a lot of similarities about it. There's some differences. I mean, working with a municipality, usually, you get a project and it's got like a sort of a predetermined schedule that you're working towards, and that's kind of what you're trying to do, comparative to like a land development project where you're just trying to go get it done kind of as efficiently and as fast as possible. So the pace at which you might be working on a land development project is certainly accelerated compared to a municipal project. But it's all the same stuff. It's just kind of, you have to approach it as you're working on a team with the owner and with the other consultants. I mean, with these projects that we're working on, we might have between 4 and 6 sub-consultants working on the project with us. So any sort of design changes, there's ripple effects, and you have to sort of manage those. So it's a lot of similarities between municipal and land development.
Yeah, very cool. Now, you spoke about kind of the team aspect of it. What are kind of the next goals for you and your team here at Applin? And then kind of what does the future look like for you guys? Yeah,
I mean, it's been, we've come a long way in the last 8 years or so. We've expanded our area that we're working in. We've been doing a lot of work out of our Kelowna office in the interior. We've obviously do a lot of the work in the Lower Mainland. One of my goals is to start getting more involved in work on Vancouver Island. Been working closely with our Nanaimo office and Scott Lewis this year on pursuing some opportunities out there. And that's definitely a focus of mine over the next year or two, is sort of getting into that area as well.
Very cool. Now, was that something that you kind of brought up as like an initiative, or how did that opportunity come up?
No, I don't think it would have come up like that. I think Scott Lewis had just been contacting me because they were working on some utilities projects that required some pump station upgrades. Yeah. A few new developments that required some pump stations that we designed for them. So we've just been collaborating on some proposals as of late, and just looking over at that market and just as like an opportunity to get more involved.
Yeah, it's interesting how that works, is where someone will come to you for one thing, and then it evolves into this whole other, you know what I mean, this whole other market that you never even knew would be there.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of, breaking the surface on it, finding out who the other players are there, and establishing a sub-consulting team based on Vancouver Island, people like groups I'm not familiar with. Yeah. So, no, it's been neat. It'll be a work in progress for sure, but we're getting there. Yeah, no, it's exciting, especially kind of on the island. Like, it's totally different than working like interior and all that, right? So I'm assuming there are a lot of lessons to be learned, but you're able to take kind of the experience that you've done so far and apply it there. Absolutely, yeah. So I'll end it off kind of with this question here. I know you mentioned before one of the main things you kind of got into this line of work, or engineering in general, was that every day was going to kind of be different. But what part of your job, or what part of your team do you enjoy most that makes you keep kind of coming back to Applin and keep coming back to consulting and pump work in general? Yeah, I mean, going back to what I said earlier, it's really important to me how diverse of a portfolio we have, working on all different projects, all different phases. We'll have, we have anywhere between 20 and 30 projects on the go at a given time, all in different areas, all different types of projects, and at different phases of the project life. So, it's always just kind of, things are moving and things are happening, and it's fun. And we've got a great team, great group of people who love coming to work and enjoy what they do. So just really been enjoying working with them. Yeah, so getting to know the personalities and then applying it to kind of the work that you've already been doing, right? For sure. Very cool. Awesome. No, that's all we have for today. Ethan, I'd like to thank you kind of for sharing your knowledge and experience within the area, and thank you to our listeners of the workshop. Stay tuned for the next episode, and have a great day. Great. Thanks for your time. Awesome. Thank you. Take care.